They say revenge is a dish best served cold, but sometimes life serves it to you piping hot on a silver platter. My name is Sarah, and this is the story of how I discovered my husband's betrayal and how I turned the tables on him in ways he never saw coming. What started as the worst day of my life became the beginning of my liberation, and by the end of this story, you'll understand why sometimes the best revenge isn't just getting even, it's getting ahead. I thought I had the perfect marriage. Marcus and I had been together for 8 years, married for 5 of those. We lived in a beautiful suburban home, drove nice cars, and from the outside, everything looked picture perfect. Marcus was a successful financial advisor, and I worked as a marketing coordinator for a tech company. We weren't wealthy, but we were comfortable, and I believed we were building a life together based on love, trust, and shared dreams. Looking back now, I can see the signs I chose to ignore. The late nights at the office that became more frequent. The way he guarded his phone like it contained state secrets. The sudden interest in going to the gym and updating his wardrobe. The distance that grew between us, subtle at first, then impossible to ignore. But love makes you blind, doesn't it? You explain away the red flags because you can't imagine the person you chose to spend your life with could betray you so completely. The discovery came on a Tuesday afternoon in March. I had left work early with a migraine and decided to surprise Marcus by cooking his favorite dinner. I knew he had a client meeting that was supposed to run late, but I thought I'd have everything ready for when he got home. As I was looking for the recipe on our shared tablet, a notification popped up. It was a message from someone named Jessica, and the preview was enough to make my blood run cold. "Can't wait to see you tonight, baby. Wear that cologne I bought you." My hands shook as I opened the messaging app. What I found there destroyed 8 years of my life in the span of 30 seconds. Messages going back 6 months. Intimate photos. Plans for romantic getaways I knew nothing about. Declarations of love that should have been reserved for me. The worst part wasn't just the affair. It was reading how he talked about me to her. How he called our marriage a mistake. How he said I was boring and that he was only staying with me until he figured out his exit strategy. I sat on our kitchen floor and cried until I had no tears left. Then something inside me shifted. The grief transformed into something harder, colder. Marcus thought he was so clever, conducting his affair right under my nose, planning his escape while keeping me in the dark. But he had made one crucial mistake: he underestimated me. You see, while Marcus was the face of our financial partnership, I was the one who actually managed our money. I was the one who set up our accounts, who tracked our investments, who handled our taxes. Marcus was too busy playing the successful advisor to his clients to pay attention to the details of our own finances. He trusted me completely with our money, which was ironic considering how little he trusted me with his heart. That night, when Marcus came home with his lies about the client meeting, I played the perfect wife. I served him dinner, asked about his day, and even laughed at his jokes. But inside, I was planning. Over the next few weeks, I became a detective in my own life. I gathered evidence of his affair, documenting everything. Photos of the messages, records of his spending on Jessica, proof of their hotel meetings. I consulted with a divorce attorney in secret, learning about my rights and options. But more importantly, I started moving our money. Marcus had always been careless about financial details. When I told him I was consolidating our accounts for better interest rates, he barely looked up from his phone. When I mentioned that I was moving some investments around for tax purposes, he just nodded and signed whatever I put in front of him. He was so distracted by his affair that he didn't notice I was systematically transferring funds into accounts he didn't know existed. I opened new accounts at different banks using my maiden name. I moved money gradually, in amounts that wouldn't trigger any automatic alerts. I liquidated investments that were in my name only. I even started a small business, a freelance marketing consultancy, and began funneling money through it. All perfectly legal, all documented, all mine. The beauty of it was that Marcus was funding his own downfall. Every expensive dinner he bought Jessica, every hotel room he booked for their romantic weekends, every piece of jewelry he gave her, it was all coming from our joint accounts, accounts that I was systematically emptying. He was literally paying for the rope I was going to hang him with. 3 months after discovering the affair, I had moved nearly $200,000 out of his reach. Our savings, our investment accounts, even the money from the sale of some stock options I had convinced him to cash in early. He thought we were being smart about our finances. In reality, I was preparing for war. The confrontation came on a Friday evening in June. Marcus had told me he was going out of town for a client conference, but I knew from tracking his location that he was actually at a resort 2 hours away with Jessica. I had all the evidence I needed, all the money I could safely move, and most importantly, I had a plan. I packed my things while he was gone, but I didn't leave immediately. Instead, I waited. Saturday night, I knew he'd be back, probably spinning some story about his successful business trip. I was ready for him. When Marcus walked through the door, he found me sitting at our dining room table with a stack of papers in front of me. His face went pale when he saw the printed screenshots of his messages with Jessica. It went completely white when he saw the bank statements showing what I had done to our accounts. "Hello, Marcus," I said calmly. "How was your conference?" He tried to bluster his way through it at first. Denied everything, claimed the messages were fake, accused me of being crazy and paranoid. But the evidence was overwhelming, and eventually, his denials crumbled into excuses. He loved me but wasn't in love with me anymore. He was going to tell me about Jessica eventually. He was trying to spare my feelings by having an affair instead of asking for a divorce outright. The audacity was breathtaking. Here was a man who had betrayed me in the most fundamental way possible, who had stolen months of my life while planning his exit, who had humiliated me with another woman, and he wanted me to believe he was protecting my feelings. "That's interesting," I said, sliding a bank statement across the table. "Because it looks like you've been spending quite a bit of my feelings on hotel rooms and jewelry." That's when he noticed the account balances. The confused look on his face was almost comical as he tried to process what he was seeing. Our joint checking account had enough to cover the monthly bills and not much else. Our savings account was empty. Our investment accounts were closed. "Where's our money, Sarah?" he demanded, as if he had any right to make demands. "My money," I corrected him, "is safe." "Your money is whatever you have in your personal accounts, which if I recall correctly, isn't very much because you've been spending it all on your girlfriend." The next few hours were a masterclass in watching a manipulator realize he had been outmaneuvered. Marcus went through every stage of realization. First confusion, then anger, then attempts at bargaining, and finally a kind of stunned acceptance. He threatened to call the police until I reminded him that I had done nothing illegal. He threatened to take me to court until I reminded him that I had evidence of his adultery and misuse of marital funds for his affair. But the most satisfying moment came when he called Jessica to tell her that their plans for the future had hit a snag. I listened to his side of the conversation as he explained that his wife had discovered their affair and had somehow made their money disappear. I watched his face crumble as Jessica apparently told him exactly what she thought of a man who couldn't provide the lifestyle he had promised her. By Sunday evening, Marcus was alone, nearly broke, and facing the reality that his carefully planned exit strategy had backfired spectacularly. I, meanwhile, was in a hotel room across town, planning my actual future. The divorce proceedings were swift and brutal. With evidence of Marcus's affair and his misuse of marital funds, my attorney was able to negotiate a settlement that was extremely favorable to me. Marcus tried to argue that I had hidden assets, but since everything I had moved was either mine to begin with or had been transferred with his knowledge and consent, his claims fell flat. The house, which was mostly paid for with money I had inherited from my grandmother, became mine entirely. The cars were split, but since I had been making the payments on both, I got the better one. Most satisfying of all, Marcus was required to pay me alimony for 3 years, money that would come from the financial planning business he would now have to rebuild essentially from scratch. Jessica disappeared from his life within a month of the money trouble becoming apparent. Turns out she was more interested in the lifestyle he could provide than in him personally. Marcus tried to win me back briefly, promising he would end things with Jessica and work on our marriage, but it was far too late for that. You can't unbreak trust, and you can't unsay the things he had said about me to another woman. The aftermath was challenging but liberating. I had to rebuild my life completely, but for the first time in years, I was building something that was entirely mine. I used some of the money to start my own marketing firm. I bought a small condo downtown, something completely different from the suburban dream house that had become a nightmare. I traveled, something Marcus had never been interested in. I reconnected with friends I had lost touch with during my marriage. Most importantly, I learned to trust myself again. The experience taught me that I was stronger and more resourceful than I had ever imagined. I had navigated one of the most devastating betrayals a person can experience and had come out not just surviving, but thriving. 6 months after the divorce was finalized, I ran into Marcus at a coffee shop downtown. He looked tired and older, and when he approached me, I could see he was struggling. His business was rebuilding slowly, Jessica was long gone, and he was living in a small apartment on the other side of town. "Sarah," he said, and I could hear the regret in his voice. "I know I have no right to ask, but do you think we could talk? Maybe work things out?" I looked at this man who had once been the center of my world, who I had trusted completely, who had betrayed that trust so thoroughly. I felt nothing. No anger, no sadness, no lingering love. Just a kind of peaceful indifference. "Marcus," I said, "we did talk. We talked when you called our marriage a mistake in your messages to Jessica. We talked when you spent our money on hotel rooms for your affair. We talked when you planned your exit strategy while pretending to love me. The conversation is over. He started to protest, to make more excuses, but I had already walked away. I had spent enough years of my life listening to his words. I was done. A year later, my business was thriving. I had hired 2 employees and was considering expanding into a larger office space. I had started dating again, carefully and on my own terms. I had learned to enjoy my own company and had built a life that was rich and full and entirely my own. People often ask me if I feel guilty about what I did to Marcus. If I think I went too far in moving our money and leaving him financially devastated. The answer is simple. I feel as guilty as he felt when he was betraying our marriage vows with another woman. Which is to say, not at all. Marriage is supposed to be a partnership built on trust, honesty, and mutual respect. Marcus violated all of those principles. He made a conscious choice to deceive me, to steal months of my life, to expose me to health risks through his affair, and to plan his exit while keeping me in the dark about it all. He forfeited his right to trust and consideration the moment he decided to cheat. What I did was protect myself using the tools at my disposal. I was smarter than he gave me credit for, more observant than he realized, and more capable than he had ever acknowledged. He underestimated me completely, and that underestimation cost him everything. The money I moved wasn't just our savings, it was my security, my future, my ability to rebuild my life after his betrayal. He had already decided to end our marriage. I just made sure that when it ended, I would be the one in control of my own destiny. Some people call it revenge, but I prefer to think of it as justice. Marcus got exactly what he deserved, the consequences of his own choices. He chose to have an affair, he chose to lie to me, he chose to plan his exit in secret, and he chose to underestimate my intelligence and capabilities. Every consequence that followed was a direct result of decisions he made. The real irony is that if Marcus had simply been honest with me about his feelings, if he had come to me and said he wanted a divorce, we could have handled it civilly. We could have divided our assets fairly, maintained some respect for each other, and moved on with our lives. Instead, his deception and betrayal forced me to protect myself, and in protecting myself, I ensured that he would pay the maximum possible price for his choices. There's a lesson here about underestimating people, especially the people closest to you. Marcus saw me as the quiet, supportive wife who handled the boring details of our life while he focused on the exciting parts. He never recognized that being the person who handles the details means having intimate knowledge of how everything works. He never realized that the same skills that made me good at managing our finances and organizing our life would make me very good at dismantling everything he took for granted. I think about Marcus sometimes, but not with any lingering emotion. He's become a cautionary tale in my mind, a reminder of what happens when you take the people who love you for granted. He had a wife who supported his dreams, managed his life, and trusted him completely. He had financial security, a beautiful home, and a partnership that could have lasted a lifetime. He threw it all away for an affair with a woman who abandoned him the moment things got difficult. Meanwhile, I discovered strengths I never knew I had. I learned that I could be strategic and calculating when I needed to be. I learned that I could make difficult decisions and live with the consequences. I learned that I could build a life entirely on my own terms and find happiness in ways I had never imagined. The most valuable thing I gained from this experience wasn't the money or the house or the successful business, though all of those things are nice. The most valuable thing I gained was the knowledge that I can handle anything life throws at me. I survived the worst betrayal I could imagine, and I didn't just survive, I thrived. When I tell this story, people often focus on the financial maneuvering, the way I moved the money and left Marcus struggling. But that's not really what the story is about. It's about recognizing your own worth and refusing to let anyone treat you as less than you deserve. It's about understanding that sometimes the people who claim to love you are the ones most likely to underestimate you. And it's about the power that comes from taking control of your own narrative instead of letting someone else write your story. Marcus thought he was writing a story where he got everything he wanted: the exciting affair, the easy exit, the financial security, and the freedom to start over. Instead, he ended up in a story where his actions had real consequences, where the woman he underestimated turned out to be smarter and stronger than he ever imagined, and where justice was served by the very person he had wronged. If you're listening to this story and you're going through something similar, if you've discovered betrayal in your own life, remember this: you are more powerful than you think you are. You have more options than you realize. And you deserve better than someone who would betray your trust and take your love for granted. Don't let anyone make you feel guilty for protecting yourself. Don't let anyone convince you that you should be understanding or forgiving towards someone who has fundamentally violated your trust. And most importantly, don't let anyone underestimate you the way Marcus underestimated me. The best revenge isn't always getting even. Sometimes the best revenge is building a life so much better than what you had before that you realize the person who betrayed you actually did you a favor. They forced you to discover strengths you never knew you had, to build something entirely your own, to become someone stronger and more independent than you ever imagined possible. Today, 3 years after I discovered Marcus's affair, I can honestly say that I'm grateful for what happened. Not grateful for the pain or the betrayal, but grateful for the opportunity to discover who I really am when I'm not defining myself in relation to someone else. I'm grateful for the chance to build a business, a home, and a life that reflects my values and my dreams instead of compromising on someone else's vision. Marcus is still struggling to rebuild his financial planning practice. Jessica is long gone, married to someone else now, someone with better financial prospects, I imagine. As for me, I'm planning my next adventure. I'm considering buying a vacation home in Costa Rica, something that would have been impossible when I was splitting financial decisions with someone who never shared my dreams of travel and adventure. The woman who discovered those messages on a Tuesday afternoon in March no longer exists. She was replaced by someone stronger, someone wiser, someone who knows her own worth and won't settle for anything less than she deserves. That transformation was painful, but it was also the best thing that ever happened to me. Sometimes life forces you to become the person you were always meant to be. Sometimes betrayal is actually liberation in disguise. And sometimes the worst thing that happens to you turns out to be the first day of your best life. Marcus taught me many things during our marriage, but the most valuable lesson came after it ended. Never underestimate a woman who has nothing left to lose and everything to gain. That lesson cost him everything, but it gave me something far more valuable than money. It gave me myself. And that, in the end, is the ultimate revenge.